There's hundreds of thousands of dollars up for grabs on Thursday's preseason slate. And you've come looking for who are even going to be the guys that are playing and which ones are the best options. Well, I've put in about 5 to 10 hours of work on this slate specifically, so let's dive in. And we'll start in the Seattle backfield, where it looks like 4 running backs could be down in this game. Kenneth Walker and Kenny McIntosh aren't going to play, and Zach Charbonnet and DJ Dallas are also dealing with injury. Now, this means only 3 running backs might see usage, which for a preseason game is great. It might mean 1 running back plays the entire second half, and I like Bryant Koback the most. He checks the box of potential playing time in this game, and also he's a nice athlete and he produced in college. 1,400 rushing yards, over 300 receiving yards, so 1,700 total yards, and 30 receptions is the big one. He can catch passes. So I'll be targeting him. He's one of the better running back plays on the slate, and then we'll move to the Texans. Now, the Texans backfield is interesting. They could have a lot of guys involved here. They want to play their starters. Dameon Pierce is currently dealing with injury, so follow up on that, but let's start with Valladay. He's a 2023 undrafted free agent, but he's currently standing out in camp and expected to see a good amount of run in the second half. He's a solid athlete, has elite burst, well above average speed and agility, and what I like the most is this right here. The guy can catch passes. 37 receptions last year in college, and look at his target shares. Anything whenever it hits 10% for a running back in college is fantastic. It's elite. He did that his final 3 years of college in a row. Then in this same backfield, there's Jared Dokes, who's a little bit different of a back. As you can see here, he is a big running back, nearly 230 pounds, and he has the rare ability to have both size and athleticism. He was the number 2 running back in the 2021 draft class in terms of overall athleticism score. Now, the downside for Dokes is in college, he was just kind of average in every single department, and that's been the case during his limited time in the NFL. Now we move to the New England backfield, where they might only have 3 players, because Ramondre Stevenson isn't expected to play much, if at all, which means their depth chart's pretty thin. Ty Montgomery dealing with injury and labeled as a wide receiver on DraftKings, and then after that, as it stands, there's just only 3 other running backs: Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, and JJ Taylor. Now, out of these running backs, Kevin Harris is currently edging out Pierre Strong barely for the running back 2 job in camp, but both guys are expected to see run because the Patriots want to see if they need to add a veteran back. Harris was a 6th-round pick from last year. He's a bigger running back. He kind of doesn't gel all that well as a 1-2 punch with Stevenson, but he was productive in college. And then there's Pierre Strong, who's more of a complement back to Stevenson. He's a better pass catcher. He's a better overall athlete than a Kevin Harris, so I would like him if you're choosing between the 2. But the sneaky player might be JJ Taylor, who just continues to hang on this team as a 2020 undrafted free agent, and he has past experience in the preseason the last 2 years with the Patriots. In 2021, he averaged over 8 touches per game in the preseason, and in 2022, he averaged 6 touches per game. And again, this is a dude who in college proved he can catch passes, over 30 receptions his final year. Now, the final backfield we'll talk about is Minnesota, and it's another one that there might not be a lot of guys here depending on if Alexander Mattison plays, but the thing that you must note is Abram Smith was signed to this depth chart. He's likely to play in this game. He's just not listed in the player pool, so there's actually more guys involved here than it may seem. If you're going to target anybody here, I'd probably target their 2023 7th-round pick, who might be fighting for the RB2 job right now with Ty Chandler in camp. Now, the upsides is McBride is just a matchup nightmare. He's a big, strong running back who last year in college had over 1,700 rushing yards, but the downside is right here in college, throughout his 3-year career, he had just 5 total receptions. So those are the running backs for all 4 teams in the situations. Now, of course, some things can change as I record this on Tuesday afternoon, and we can get news on Wednesday or Thursday, so be sure to check Patreon for all the updates to the projections and notes. Now we'll move to the wide receiver rooms. We can start with the Patriots, where I want to look at a couple of guys here. We can start with Demario Douglas. Now, Douglas is a 6th-round rookie from this year. He kind of overlaps for what the Tyquan Thornton role is in this offense, a smaller, really fast wide receiver, and apparently he's beating out Thornton, who's been injured in camp right now. You can see his 40-yard dash is pretty good, and the other thing is his target share, because according to Player Profiler, he earned 30%, over 30% of his team's targets in college, which is top 10% of all time. It shows he can earn targets downfield. But the issue with the downfield wide receivers in the preseason is you have worse QBs and worse offensive line. It's harder to get them the ball. Now, an interesting name from the Patriots wide receiver core is their 6th-round pick from this year as well, Kayshon Boutte out of LSU. Now, this dude, as a true freshman at LSU, put up over 700 yards. He was dominating SEC cornerbacks. He was supposed to be the next best thing, but then never did anything his following 2 years. He did not have the best athletic testing. He didn't seem all that interested. There were reports of him being lazy, so he fell to the 6th round. But as of right now, he's expected to see good run in this game, a good amount of run with Bailey Zappi, and start the preseason game, maybe play the whole first half. Now, the final guy from this team I want to talk about is Trey Nixon, the wide receiver for the Patriots. He was involved last year. If he played in the preseason, you might know his name. Last year, he averaged 6.7 targets per game and 56 yards per game. So that's some good production from the Patriots wide receivers to target. Now let's go to the Texans, where they have a few rookies that are standing out. The first guy we can touch on is their 6th-round pick this year, Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State, who was actually a finalist for one of the 3 best wide receivers in the country last year. And the reason being is, look at this. He had 163 targets last year, nearly 1,200 yards, and he earned 34% of his team's targets. In his college career, he always topped 24%. This is an elite wide receiver at getting open. He should see a good amount of run in this game. Now, another wide receiver would be their third round pick who stayed in Houston. He went to Houston in college. Now he's with the Houston Texans in Nathaniel Dell, which the downsides for him is he is one of the smallest wide receivers we've ever seen at just 5'8" and 165 pounds. But this is offset by how productive he was in college. That's why he was a third round pick. Because as you can see right here, look at his final 2 years of college. 2 years ago, he had over 1,300 yards. Last year, he has over 100 receptions and nearly 1,400 yards alone. Now, the final player from the Texans wide receiver core is not a rookie. He's actually over 27 years old, but he's had some preseason experience and success in Alex Bachman. In 3 preseason games last year, he posted 19 catches for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was one of the best wide receivers, if not the best, in the entire preseason. Now, before we continue with the wide receivers and some other positions, I want to let you know that there is preseason projections for every single player, updated notes for every single game and player that you can see right now. There's 41 spots remaining if you're interested for the preseason. It'll also get you all of the tools and analysis from the fantasy blueprint if you're in a fantasy league as well. Everything you need to dominate the preseason, your fantasy draft, and a whole lot more. It is on Patreon, link down below. You can check it out in the Hall of Fame package. It also says preseason here. Any questions, just reach out to me on whatever platform you can get in contact. Again, that is the link in the description below, or you can scan the QR code on the screen to go ahead and get the tools that will help you win in the preseason. Next up is the Seahawks wide receivers. There's a couple of spots here to target. We still don't know what's going on with the Seahawks quarterbacks. Who's going to play? Will Geno Smith play at all? As of this recording, it will be reflected on Patreon in the projections and notes, but we can start with their former second round pick, D. Eskridge. Now, Eskridge is known for his speed. You can see his 40-yard dash. He's dealt with injuries his first 2 years of his career, but the reason why he was taken so early and why he's appealing in a preseason format is he dominated in college, and you would expect him to maybe be able to do that against preseason cornerbacks. And now these 2 stats from Player Profiler prove his domination. First of all, his college dominator spells it out for you. 45% of his team's offensive production and 33% of their targets during his career. Then there's their 2023 undrafted free agent fighting for a roster spot who will definitely be a sleeper in the second half of this game in Matt Landers. I mean, this dude is an absolutely elite athlete. 96th percentile speed. His catch radius is fantastic. He has above average agility. He checks all the boxes there. Now, to see where he stacks up against all the other wide receivers, well, he was actually 9th. Top 10 in athleticism. He had over 900 yards last year at Arkansas in the SEC. A solid player. Then from the Vikings right now, not a lot is standing out. Jordan Addison's supposed to play in this game, but we don't really know how much. There's some injuries to Jalen Naylor, who was going to be somebody I wanted to watch out for in this game, but he might not play. The only guy I would really look at this point is Jalen Reagor, but apparently he's the wide receiver 4. How much will he get run? The former first round pick now in this team earned a lot of targets in college. Minnesota is kind of a shaky spot right now. So we got the running backs and wide receivers done. Now let's move to quarterbacks and tight ends. We can start in Minnesota, where Jaron Hall stands out as somebody who should see a lot of second half run, if not the entire second half. He's their 5th round pick from this year. He's out of BYU, and the reason I like him the most is the rushing yards right here. Over 300 rushing yards the past 2 years. As a starter, he averaged 55 rushing yards per game. I mean, if he does that in a preseason game and has 5 to 10 points on the ground alone, if he finds the end zone, he'll be valuable. Then a quick name to point out of the Houston Texans quarterback, CJ Stroud's expected to play, but they're thinking just a few drives, and then Davis Mills should fill up maybe the rest of the first quarter. But Case Keenum, the veteran, might see the entire second half, reports are saying early on, which obviously, even if he is not the greatest of quarterbacks, a veteran in the second half against worse defenses is somebody to look out for. Now, the final room we should look at is kind of confusing here, and that would be the Patriots wide receiver room, who right now they should have 3 quarterbacks expected to play in this. It doesn't seem like Mac Jones will. And if that's the case, like we're seeing Malik Cunningham practice as a wide receiver, but lately he's been practicing as a quarterback. He was a quarterback in college for Louisville. He has rushing upside. He was productive there. If he's going to see quarterback reps, they're going to have to see 3 quarterbacks split 4 quarters, which isn't as good as maybe some other situations. But if Bailey Zappi starts the game and is not expected to play too much, and you get McSorley and Cunningham seeing maybe closer to 2 quarters each, 1.5 to 2 quarters, that's where both these guys who have bigger arms and mobility can maybe start to pay off. Cunningham would probably start to see a lot of that 4th quarter run. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but we're still not positive what's going on with the Seahawks quarterback room, so that'll be updated. I don't want to really touch on it too much right now. And then for the tight end rooms, I mean, you have to start a tight end since it's not a showdown slate. There's not really too much to like here because a lot of tight ends aren't playing in this game, or they're banged up right now. I mean, the guy from Houston that we can talk about, because a lot of their tight ends are all banged up and not playing, like their top 3 tight ends, and then they have a bunch of blocking tight ends like Eric Tomlinson and Nick Vanette, you can see here. But Mason Schreck, I mean, this is a guy who maybe is worthwhile. Now, it's been a while, but in 2016, his final year of college, when he actually got a lot of run, which he hasn't gotten too much run in the NFL, he had 59 receptions. So we know this guy can catch passes. He's going to be the best pass catching tight end that's available and healthy for the Texans in this game. So that's at least one option. And there's just really not a lot of good tight end options really ever in these types of formats, but definitely on this slate. You have Josh Oliver, who in the past with the Jags, who was very good, but now he's on Minnesota, got a big contract. They want to use him a lot more in 2 tight end sets. I don't know how much he plays here. And then there's Ben Sims. He's at least a 2023 undrafted free agent. So they may be a little bit more incentivized to use him. He has elite speed and size. I mean, he was a top 5 athlete amongst the tight ends in this draft class. And he earned nearly 4 targets per game at Baylor. So he's out there running routes. He knows how to at least get open and get some yards after the catch. So this is the content for the 2-game slate. I won't be making any videos for the weekend slates where there'll be a lot more games and a lot more to chew on. I'll have everything you need in the notes and the projections on Patreon. The truth is, these preseason videos overall, from the research to the production, take somewhere between 7 and 8 hours, and I just won't be doing that over the weekend. But you can check it out on Patreon down below so you can get your fix for every single game and have your edge. Now, if you found this video helpful and you want to make sure you have all the content you need for the DFS season this year right on this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button before you go.